Hello, this is the Jojo Part 5, Episode 1 and 2 review. So, a little background about Jojo. There's 5 parts to it, which is quite obvious on the title. So, as far as me, I've seen all five, I've seen all 4 parts so far, and I'm looking forward to Part 5. It's been, I'm quite hyped for it, and I have high expectations for Part 5. Currently, I'm just on anime only, so I don't really know what's gonna happen. So, it's like a new adventure for me. So let's get into it. Episode 1. So I quite like the introduction to Giovanni that we get. So it starts off with Koichi, a character we're quite familiar with and we know already. So he enters Italy and he's looking for a stand user. And then he kind of runs into Giovanni quite early on and he like poses as a taxi driver where he ends up trying to scam Koichi and steals his items. Quite like the growth that Koichi has undergone since part four, because if you caught, there's quite a big contrast to how he was at the start of part four to how he is in the start of part five. Like the Koichi in start four was pretty weak and pathetic, bit of a nerd, but then in this one, he's matured and grown. As when he tries to when he tries to drive off with his stuff, he uses Echo's reverb quite nicely, and you know what? I was quite impressed with the Koichi as an individual, showing his prowess that he's gained over the gained over the time during part four. So Koichi ain't taking shit from no one, which I quite like. And then we get a little glimpse into Giovanno's his little stand really when he turns Koichi's suitcase into a frog. And then later on we see this character called Lucky Luca. He approaches Giovanni. He seems to be like a territorial guy. So I think, and he kind of like asks why he's been doing jobs around the airport without paying him. So it's kind of like a loan shark tax bracket, really, which is quite typical of gangs, really. And then because of that, Luca attacks Giordano, and he attacks his stand. So he attacks the frog. And then what happens is the place where he attacks, he ends up having a dent in his head. So it's kind of mysterious at the time why that happens. But then later on, we see Koichi. He runs into Giordano again, and then Giordano he uses his stand to get away from Koichi, which is revealed to be Golden Wind or Golden Experience, as he calls it. I prefer to call it Golden Experience because I feel like that's what it's meant to be. And then Koichi tries to punch his the what's it called, the flowers that he sprouts, and then this is where we learn the ability of the stand Golden Experience. It sends back the user's damage. So when Koichi hits the stand, hits the plant, he gets hit back. So it's so far his stand is looking pretty OP with the ability to also reflect damage at the opponent. And then we find out the reason why Koichi actually comes to Italy, which was to look for a stand user. And the picture he has is of like a black haired teenager. But then he confirms that it's actually Giovanna and his hair's gone blonde. And that is because he has Dio's bloodline within him, and it would just kind of awaken. Hence, he has blonde hair in the stand, really. So, so part one ends with the gangster Bujarati questioning Giovanni in the train station on the sub what happened to Luca and if he knows anything about it. Adds a bit of suspense. Right. So in this part two, let's go to episode two now. So in episode two, we are introduced and we are gifted with this exceptional opening, which is called "Fighting Gold" by Coda. If you're if you're a JoJo fan or if you've seen part two, then you would know that Kodo also does Bloodstream, the song. So like he's not new to JoJo. So he's pretty typical JoJo singer, I guess, because he's already done part two before, which I also like. But something about this song is really catchy. So after about five listens to this song, I decided to add it to my collection, and I I'd happily say that I'm in love with the song right now. It's pretty good. I think this is one of those openings that you just can't skip, really. All right, so let's get into the actual episode. So the episode starts off with Bujarati and Giovanna having a little standoff battle. So Bujarati's stand, he has the ability to make zippers anywhere, which is kind of strange, really. So he makes a zipper on his face, and he also has that weird quirk. It's almost perverted where he can taste fear. I mean, taste someone's lying. Just classic JoJo bizarreness, really. And then we also see another ability of Giovanna, which is whenever he attacks anyone with his stand, he can make their what's it called? He can make their senses go berserk, which is beautifully illustrated in this episode. It shows like an after image of himself looking at himself getting punched, which is pretty trippy. But I also like the what you call it, the vision displayed here, the imagination. So the reason why it happens is because whenever he punches someone, it gives them more life, kind of causing their senses to go berserk. So it's pretty cool as well. Kind of makes them more what's it called confused and dazed. Really. Very good. And so before the fight, we also get a little introduction to Giovanno's past, really. So it turns out his mom has always been like a single mother, and she's kind of like a hoe, really. She's partying, and there's not really like a hoe, I would say, just a bad mother. Just neglecting a child, going out, not caring for a child. So pretty bad mother. And then after a while, he gets a stepdad, which just turns out to be abusive, really. And then we see a scene of him beating him with a belt. And then because of the way his dad and mom treats him, he kind of has the ability to read moods, which is kind of shown when he knows when he's just looking at his stepdad, and gets some bread from him. And then with he has an encounter with a gangster who he meets randomly, and he saves unconsciously. That's when he develops his power of the golden wind. And then because he saved the gangster's life, yeah, he kind of like the gangster kind of what's it called? Oh no, wait. Basically, Giovanna has always been bullied as a kid, and then the gangster kind of helps out with the bullies, and because of that, he kind of admires the gangster because he sees him more of a father figure than his stepdad is. And then the gangster is always kind of distant, and but is always helping. As seen in that part where he buys him an ice cream, but then doesn't show him too much affection. I can see why he's doing this because he doesn't really want him to get involved, but he still cares for the child, and he owes him because he saved his life, really. So then, let's get back into the fight. So Giordano and Bujarati have like a little standoff. It's quite a long battle. It stretches over most of the episode. And then uh, another thing, I don't know what's with these subs. I don't understand why they never get it right, but maybe it's just there's a reason for it. But in the subs it says it's called Zipperman, but I can clearly hear him say Sticky Fingers, so I'm gonna go with his stand name, Sticky Fingers. He shows a bit of utility in his ability, which is pretty cool. Where he zips out of the train really quick to get a quick escape, and he zips onto humans, which is pretty good. I thought the overall battle was pretty smart, and it's a classic JoJo battle, stand battle. Really loved it very much. Uh, and then during the battle, what's it called? One of the Bujarati kind of uses an innocent bystander as his as a way to hide in the zipper. But then Giorno doesn't try to hurt the bystander as much as he can. And then Bujarati like also hesitates when he tries to use him as a decoy. So this kind of showed Giovanna that Bujarati isn't that bad. And then from this episode, we kind of learn about Giorno's like real plan or why his motives, and he wants to be a gangster because he wants to get this drugs off the street and stop selling it to kids. So he wants to be a bad thing in order to do good thing. So his overall cause is kind of noble, which kind of makes him more like a Jojo than he's currently being portrayed when he's trying to scam Koichi. So this is kind of the turning point for me. So in episode one, I would say Giovanni, like I wasn't really a fan of him. Didn't like him because he was kind of a douche trying to steal Koichi's stuff and wasn't that likable. But this is making me slowly appreciate him as a character. So then the episode kind of ends with Giovanna winning the fight against Bujarati, and he wants to join the gang. And what Bujarati tells him to do is uh, go to the recruiter because he's the only one that knows what the boss looks like. So this is kind of like foreshadowing the boss is kind of mysterious already, and this is pretty much an end of episode two. So my impressions on episode one and two so far, they're pretty good actually. I would say the art and the animation is absolutely beautiful. Classic JoJo. You know, it just looks so nice. It's just like, oh, I don't know. I don't know that. I've never read the manga, but if it's anything as good as this, it just looks so smooth as well. It's so much definition of time and put effort being put into this. So yeah, and I would say I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and it's definitely lived up to the hype so far. I'm looking forward to the rest of this. And then the ending song, I don't know what, I don't know what it is. It's WTF really. I don't know. Plus, because it's an English song, it just doesn't have the same effect where you know when you're an English watcher. So I just don't know what to say to that really.